Welcome to Headliners of Service, our virtual speakers series presented by the Global Service Institute at Long Island University, featuring engaging conversations with exceptional leaders from all walks of life. These inspiring, timely, and fascinating discussions are hosted by Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby, the chair of the Global Service Institute. Today's headliner is Jessica Lynch. As a private first class in the U.S. Army, she was captured by Iraqi forces, became a prisoner of war, and was rescued by American troops. During this presentation, we invite all of you to ask questions in the Q&A box, and we will have our guest answer as many as possible later in the program. You can also email them right now to questions@globalserviceinstitute.org. Everyone, please welcome Rita Cosby.
And hello, everybody. I am Rita Cosby. I am the chair of the Global Service Institute at Long Island University. And welcome to our Headliners of Service Speakers series. Our guest today truly exemplifies service and also courage. She is former prisoner of war, Jessica Lynch. Jessica, it's such an honor to have you here with all of us. Thank you for making the time for this very important thing.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone.
We are thrilled to have you here, Jessica, and you look fantastic. I want to ask you, of course, because this is being watched around the world. You were a very young person. You were a teenager. You're still very young, but you were a teenager when you decided to join the U.S. military. Why did you decide to serve at such a young age?
Yeah, actually, I had always had the dream of becoming a kindergarten teacher. So, yeah, I mean, it really wasn't in my radar, I guess. My family is a huge military family. We have uncles who were serving. My grandpa served. But for me, it really wasn't something that I had gave much thought to. So yeah, when the summer of 2001, after I graduated high school, an Army recruiter, kind of pulled up into our driveway, and he got out and he looked very kind of dapper and just well put together. I mean, and they walk. Just everything about him that day as he approached us, we were like, all right, what's about to happen, but yeah, he just spoke to my brother and I about, the being able to travel the world, getting education paid for, the whole spiel that, all recruiters go through. But for us, it just kind of wasn't something that we had planned. My brother was already into college and he was going for engineering. And then, like I said, I had just graduated high school and was getting ready to attend in the fall for elementary education. So, yeah, so he just started talking to us, and kind of one thing led to another. And, basically after the recruiters left, and my brother and my sister and I were sitting kind of at our dinner table and talking to our parents about what had happened earlier that day. And yeah, I mean, it was just something that my brother and I really debated long and hard about, but we decided that this was something that we wanted to do to kind of take that financial burden off of our parents, so that they did not have to put all three of us into college at one time. Like, my brother's 1 year older than I am. My sister is about a year and a half younger. So we're all very close in age. And it was just something that, we kind of, just came to the decision that that's just something that we didn't want our parents, our family, to have to worry about financially. So it did have a lot to do with education, but at the same time, like I said, we were a huge already supporter of the military. And so definitely being able to wear that uniform was also a huge, a huge perk. And, we knew once we took the oath and had that uniform on, that we had made the right decision.
And here you are from West Virginia, You're 18 years old. This is, of course, before 9/11. But the recruiter didn't mince any words with you and did say, look, there is a chance at some point you could go to war. But that really wasn't so much of a thought at that point, right?
Yeah, correct. No, I mean, like you said, it was the summer of 2001. So before September 11th had even occurred. Yeah, I mean, he really didn't kind of go through all the risk of, what ifs. We just kind of had it in our minds that we would go, we would, serve. We were in active duty. So we knew that we were going to have to leave home and just I don't know. I mean, honestly, we knew that there was a potential, I guess, at some point that we may see war, but we didn't realize that it was going to happen as soon as it did for us.
And so here you go for training. First, you go for basic training in Fort Jackson, right, South Carolina. Describe that, and then you move on to Fort Lee, Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. So once I got into basic training, obviously this was 1 week after 9/11 had just occurred. So I was scared. I mean, I think I was, along with the rest of the country, I was unsure of what was about to happen, I don't know. I mean, there was so many emotions going through my head of, those what ifs that the recruiter didn't talk about. But, you just kind of fresh into basic training, not sure. You got these drill sergeants in your face screaming at you. So it was definitely a huge change. But I think once I was in there and you make it past that first or second week, and you kind of get into a routine. And I think that's what I kind of like the best, because I'm one of those people. I like to be organized. I like a routine. I like that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part for me was having someone, yell at me in such a manner that I kind of wasn't used to, but I knew that that was going to happen. So it's not that it hurt my feelings or that, I wanted to do anything back to them in any manner, because that wasn't it. It was just, I think you just kind of get scared that someone is that up and close. But I also knew that that was their job. That's what they do. They break you down to kind of rebuild you, to make you a better person, to make you, that soldier or marine that they are looking for. So yeah, I mean, I thankfully made it through basic training without too many issues. I did wear a size boots that were a size too small the majority of my time in basic training, but I was scared to say anything like that they hurt my feet or that they were too small. So I just dealt with it the best I could. So yeah, once I graduated from there, I went to Fort Lee in Virginia, and my job there was supply clerk. So a lot of it was just learning, kind of ordering, how to process and order. And um, I really wasn't sure exactly what all it entailed, except for maybe it was like what you guys would think of like a clerk job. So I kind of took this knowing that it was going to kind of be an office job, that I wouldn't have to be kind of out with the machinery, the heavier stuff. But yeah, I knew that ordering the pens, the paper, the toilet paper, anything that my unit would need, that's kind of where I felt important and needed, I guess you could say. So yeah, I mean, I loved it. I was, jumping right into the job. I knew exactly what I was doing. And then once, again, that flew by so quick. I know that when you are home and you are, have those loved ones at basic training or at AIT, the time really does go by fast. The first few weeks are a little bit slower, but once you kind of get past that initial curve, everything kind of really flies by. So it did for me. And before I knew it, I was stationed in El Paso, which is Fort Bliss.
And then, of course, soon after, you get sent to Iraq. When you're over there, what was your thoughts when you first got there?
Well, first we went to Kuwait and we spent about a month in Kuwait. Again, it was just kind of adapting to the environment. Again, it was so much different just being there than it is here in the United States. So, everything about, just even running in the sand. I mean, all of that, even though we had that training here, especially out west where I was stationed. But it's just a different kind of atmosphere and environment. So we spent about a month there, just again, prepping, preparing, waiting. And finally, on March 20th is when President Bush officially declared war. So at that point is when things really started to kind of kick in that this was real. And, you know, things were about to happen. I mean, we didn't know what, we didn't know when. We just knew that once we crossed the border, the berm, that this was this was now serious, and it was, for real.
Yeah, and boy, did it become real
Yes.
on March 23rd, 2003. Walk us through sort of what happened that day. Sort of take us from the beginning of the day and how things evolved, and just unbelievable day for you, of course.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, we had initially ended up getting lost. So before we had made it to March 23rd, um, it's kind of important, I guess, detail to mention that my unit actually ended up kind of becoming lost in the desert. So we separated. Half of us pulled forward with the rest of the convoy, and then a small portion of us stayed behind to help, those slower vehicles and keep them pulling forward. At one point, our GPSs failed us. That we weren't able to communicate. We weren't able to, use those GPSs. So the morning of March 23rd, we saw these lights, and what we assumed was the rest of the convoy. So instantly, we kind of perked up. We knew that this was, we're finally coming to the end of what was basically a nightmare for us, because again, we were lost. We barely stopped. We were, exhausted mentally, physically. So when we saw those lights above us or ahead of us, we assumed that that was the rest of the convoy, and we headed toward it. Um, at one point, we reached Hardtop Road, and we had the decision to kind of turn right, turn left. What do we do? And unfortunately, some mistakes were made. My chain of command read the map, the paper map. Again, GPSs weren't working, so our paper map was read wrong, and we ended into or kind of drove into the city of Nasiriyah. And once we crossed that bridge into the city, at that point, it was very early in the morning, probably about 6 a.m. And I don't know. I mean, we just instantly knew that something was wrong. I mean, you just got that gloomy kind of dreadful feeling that, came across every single one of us. And um, I think for us, seeing this white truck, small, kind of like S10 kind of model, when we kept watching it drive past us, multiple trips as we were pulled off the side of the road, determining what we were going to do. That kind of really scared us. And basically, what we were told after the ambush is that he was gathering intel on us, what kind of vehicles was part of our group, what weapons he could see, and then how many soldiers that he was able to also spot. And he was relaying that back to the middle of town. So once we jumped back into our vehicles and continued further into the town, that is when we noticed that all of these Iraqis were now standing up on the roofs. Some of them were, looking out their windows. There were quite a few that were just kind of standing out in the middle of their yards, and we knew at that moment that we needed to turn around and we needed to get out of there. And the commander, First Sergeant, made that decision to turn around, so we did, and we tried to book it back out of town as quickly as we could. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. And kind of put it into perspective for the audience, it was almost as if we were ducks in the middle of the pond. I know that's kind of a bad analogy, but we had nowhere to run, nowhere to escape, nowhere to get away from, everyone that had just now surrounded us. And as we tried to get away, that's when we heard that, first dreaded gunshot, and it was followed by a second and a third. And before we knew it, we were just in a full-fledged ambush attack. I mean, everywhere we looked, our vehicles were, being blown up in front of us. It was just kind of a nightmare. And at this point, I'm in the Humvee with my best friend Lori driving, my first sergeant in the passenger seat, and then we picked up two other soldiers who were sitting beside me that they were actually towing my 5-ton because the transfer case busted in it. So they ran out of gas. We picked them up and was just trying to get out of there as quickly as we could. And I think for me, I remember the chaos the most. Everything that was happening outside of that Humvee, but then, the first sergeant trying to communicate with the commander, the first sergeant trying to tell Lori exactly where to go or what to do. And I remember Lori, and I remember kind of watching her and just in awe of everything about her that day, of how she, just drove, and it didn't seem to bother her that, there was, bullets flying at us from every direction. And at one point, I actually remember seeing a bullet kind of fly through the driver's side window, and how it missed her, I have no idea. But I think when you're in that kind of situation, and people always say to me, but bullets travel at such a high speed, like how did you see that? And I think it was just one of those things that at that moment, everything seemed to be happening in such a slow motion that I just happened to catch the glance, a glance of it, and it caught my eye. But I remember, Lori and my first sergeant, and how brave they were, and the two men who were, taking fire. But out of those 6 weapons, I guess, we had in the vehicle, all but 2 actually malfunctioned. So We were basically, again, setting ducks. We weren't able to return fire. And and I remember, us just going as fast as we could, and Lori, swerving, and then I remember nothing. I was knocked unconscious. I don't have any memory of anything after that moment. I know that um, we were hit by an RPG on the right side of our vehicle, on the right side of the Humvee.
That was a rocket propelled grenade came and
Yes,
literally your vehicle took a hit.
yes, correct. A rocket propelled grenade hit our vehicle. It caused Lori to lose control of the vehicle, and we ended up slamming into the back of a disabled 18-wheeler into the back of its trailer. Um, at that point, again, I'm still unconscious. I, been knocked out. So I guess in a way, I'm kind of thankful, but in another sense, I kind of want to know what happened. I kind of, I know that kind of sounds weird, but I kind of wish that I knew exactly what had happened, especially since I was the only survivor. It would have been nice to be able to tell these um, other families exactly what had happened. But unfortunately, I don't have that recollection. Um, but I know that afterwards, through Army investigation, that we uh, were pulled out of the vehicle, Lori and I, because Lori actually ended up hitting her head off of the steering wheel, caused head trauma. Even though she was basically brain dead, she was still moving. Her body was still kind of twitching and alive. Um, and then the three men, my first sergeant and the two men that were sitting beside me, were all um, sadly shot and killed. And so when the Iraqis came around to determine who was KIA or who was still alive, they noticed that Lori and I were both still alive. So they took our basically lifeless bodies, and they took us to one of Saddam's palaces. They stripped us of all of our military gear. And at that point is actually when they snapped my right humerus and broke that bone. And then they took kind of metal objects and broke my tibia. The femur, we're not really sure exactly what had happened to it, other than it was broken. Again, still unconscious, but they ended up taking me from the palace and transporting me to the Saddam General Hospital. And it was, they're estimating a couple of hours afterwards that I finally woke up. By this point, Lori had already passed, so I was alone. So when I opened my eyes and I'm laying there on this bed, but I open my eyes and the first thing I see are these Iraqi men standing over top of me. And I noticed, this isn't right. So being in that kind of position, the first thing that I did was try to jump to get away from them. And I knew at that moment something was wrong because I was not able to move. I um, felt instant pain when I tried to kind of jump, but I knew that I wasn't able to set up, and I knew that I was just kind of there basically because I could not feel anything from my waist down. My right arm, again, it was broken, so I was not able to move my right. The only thing I was really able to do was move my left hand because anything else hurt.
How did you get through this, Jessica? And I know that you were there more than 9 days. Here you are. What was going on through your mind as you are now in captivity by Iraqi forces and obviously broken bones? Where did you find the strength? And did you say, gosh, I'm sure you were praying. I know you're somebody of faith, but what was going on through your mind during that unbelievable time and obviously frightening time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I think just that perseverance, that will to never give up. I knew that, as much as I was kind of wanting to ask questions and find out where the rest of my comrades were, but anything that I asked them, I really wasn't getting any information. But also obviously there was that translation kind of barrier communication where we weren't able to really communicate with one another. There was one other Iraqi who what I kind of described as broken English, so I could understand a few words that he was able to put together, and he was able to kind of understand a little bit of what I was saying, but there wasn't that clear communication like you and I are having. So it was just hard to get kind of any information out of them. And of course, they wouldn't have told me anything, even if they were able to communicate. But I think for me, just knowing at that point that I was alone, because again, I looked and kind of searched and listened because they did take my glasses away from me, so I wasn't able to see clearly. But your senses kick in, I guess you can say. So every little thing that I heard, I kind of listened for familiar voices, or sounds of anybody maybe crying in the next room, or just anything like that that kind of I might be able to pick up on, but I never did. I wasn't able to find anyone. And then, clearly afterwards, I found out that I was the only one that was being held captive there. But yeah, I think for me it was just that idea of to never give up. I knew that I wanted to keep going, but at the same time, as the days kept clicking by, um, it just got harder and harder physically, but also mentally to hang on, to grasp any kind of hope. But I think for me, it was just, thinking about my family back home and, what they were doing, or, did they even know I was missing, or, just little things like that, that I kind of held on to, that, you know, anything to make me smile or take my mind off of what I was going through. But again, it was just hard. It was difficult because mentally, physically, I was just exhausted and kind of done. Um, but I'll tell you this little quick story. I think the hardest part for me during my captivity was when they took me down to an operating room and told me that they were going to amputate my leg. And as they removed me from the bed that I was laying on and put me on to the operating room table, and I just kind of looked up and I saw that bright, shining operating room light kind of, glaring back at me. And the one, that was able to kind of talk to me and told me that, to count down. And, I noticed that I didn't have any kind of IVs or anything in me. And again, I didn't know what was wrong or why they were, or, what they were about to do to me. I just knew that they were taking the oxygen mask and they were placing it over my face and having me to count down. And instead of being able to even count down, I just started begging and, you know, pleading with them to please stop, don't do this. Just return me to the Americans, and whatever it is, whatever's wrong, you know, that they'll fix me when I get home. And I just kept saying that to them of, you know, please don't. And I don't know, I don't know if it was just, you know, having the right people kind of over top of me and guarding me that day with those Iraqi men, or, you know, or that they just physically knew that they couldn't help me. I'm not sure really what it was, but they they stopped and they
Wow.
put me back over
Wow.
on the bed, and, you know, transported me back up to upstairs and placed me in a room. And I will tell you, you know, from that moment on, I was afraid to sleep. I was afraid to close my eyes. I was afraid of what they may do to me. So I
Yeah.
think that was probably one of the hardest parts of captivity for me, is just knowing that I was basically in the hands of, you know, of them and what they may do to me. And, you know, again, thankfully, either they had a good heart or a change of heart. I'm not really sure what had happened,
Thank
but they,
goodness.
yeah, they stopped. And um then after that, I remember a couple of days later them telling me that they were going to try to take me to an American checkpoint and return me to Americans. And they loaded me up into an ambulance. We drove away, and I remember being kind of shot at. I remember, you know, us taking fire. I could hear it, and the ambulance driver kind of did a 180, and we drove away. Now, whether we were actually headed to an American checkpoint, I really don't know. I don't know if it was Americans returning fire at us. I just know that I was in the back of this ambulance. I could hear the gunshots, and
Wow.
I could feel the ambulance kind of, you know, go back the opposite direction that we were headed in.
Now, I'm sure
There,
things were so confusing. I want to get to a whole bunch of other questions here too, Jessica, but of course, most importantly, let's walk through what happened then. You survived this, you know, just harrowing ordeal. And April 1st, 2003, suddenly it's in the darkness. And we know that there were a number of informants who tipped off American forces. The whole world was looking for you and trying to find you. Tell us what happened to you that day and what you remember from this unbelievably daring raid by US Special Forces.
yeah, absolutely. I think for me, one of the I guess best memories that I can take away from this is um, when I was locked in this little hospital room. But I remember hearing the helicopters. I can remember hearing, you know, the Humvees and the heavy artillery, like your tanks. And then I could hear kind of bombs and, you know, tactics, diversions going off in the distance. So for me to hear all of that lying there in this little tiny room with these Iraqi still guarding me, and then I could hear voices, and they were in English. So that kind of perked me up. I was excited to be able to understand it and hear it for the first time. And when they started calling out, "Where is Private Lynch?" At that moment is, you know, I knew that I was the one that they were coming after, whether this was going to be good or bad. Obviously, I had had been hopeful and was praying for the best. So when that door opened and there stood beside me, these, you know, oh my gosh, it was just such a joyful feeling, and I still feel that. But one of the best moments was when um, one of the SEALs ripped off the American flag off of his uniform, and he placed it inside of my left hand, and he said, "We're Americans, and we're here to take you home." And I will never forget his words. I have that American flag patch still. So, just things like that really kind of resonated that, this is real. This is finally happening and I get to go home. And, I remember just looking back at them and saying, yeah, I'm an American soldier too. And, they whisked me away and got me out of there, and we went to Kuwait and then on to Germany.
Wow. I'm emotional hearing that story, as I'm sure everybody watching this right now is from around the world, Jessica. Did you realize at this moment, did you almost think it was a dream?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just because of everything happening kind of at that whirlwind pace of, oh my gosh, it was such again, a joyful feeling that was coming over me. But at the same time, you're right. I wasn't for sure, like, is this really kind of happening moment? So it really didn't hit me until I was out of there and actually landed in Germany and got to see my parents for the very first time. I think that's when it finally hit me, because from the time that they took me out of the hospital, the flight to Germany, all of that, I was basically kind of out of it. Them doing all the checks and monitoring, and, and I felt at that moment safe. So I was able to finally close my eyes and get some much needed sleep.
Did you realize, Jessica, that the whole world was looking for you? I mean, it was the lead story in the world. And when that rescue took place, that incredible rescue by the US Special Forces, I just remember people around the world were cheering for you and sending also well wishes. And there were so many messages that I think your family even said, no, please donate to charity. Please, limit it, because it was just so overwhelming. What was that like for you? Here you were, this young, still a teenager at this moment, and suddenly the whole world has its eyes on you and cheering and thankful that you're alive.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was 19 at the time, so I kind of, it was hard to grasp all of it, to be honest with you. But I remember actually at one point asking my mom if my friends and the rest of like our little small community back home even knew that I was missing or what had happened. And I just wanted my mom to be able to tell my friends that, I was okay and that I was going to come home. So unfortunately, she was like, "Yes, sweetheart, it's kind of a worldwide thing that's happening right now." But again, to me, I had no idea. I was completely oblivious to the whole situation of what had just happened, and it was, even now when I look back on it, it's almost as if I'm, watching a movie of someone else or reading a book about someone else's life. Like, even though I'm still experiencing the pain and the therapy and, the injuries all these 18 years later, it's still as if, it happened. And I remember everything as clear as it was yesterday. But again, sometimes it feels like, wow, where, who, what had just happened. So, but I'm very thankful to be here, and so, so blessed.
Absolutely. You were obviously in Walter Reed for, I know, many months, and then you came home. You also finished your studies. You obviously got an honorable discharge and became a teacher. And you also have a daughter. And I want you to share the story of your daughter, who is now a teenager herself, wants to go into physical therapy. As you mentioned, you are still going to physical therapy. Here it is, almost 24, here it is, it's almost 2 decades later, and you're still going to physical therapy twice a week from your injuries from back then. But your daughter wants to go into physical therapy. But your daughter is also named after someone very special in your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like Rita was saying, my daughter is 14 now. But such a blessing that I was even able to have her. So
Yes.
when we found out that we knew that we had to give her some kind of special name and meaning behind it. And yeah, Dakota was one of those names that we both agreed on, we loved. And then when I was able to look it up and kind of do further investigation, I mean, it just was the right fit for Lori, who again was my best friend who was killed, but her family is Hopi Indian. So to be able to honor Dakota after Lori, which meant friend in Native American, it was such a, I don't know, it's such an exciting thing for us. But again, it was a name that we both loved, and it was able to, be able to honor Lori in such an amazing way.
Really beautiful. I want you to talk about, what does service mean to you, Jessica Lynch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's being able to go out there and not only wear that uniform proudly, because I think just putting on that uniform and being able to wear it is one thing, but to be able to stand tall and be able to wear it with such pride, I think that is one of the best things about serving in the military. But then you also have, you're serving your community, still still being able to give back, and that's something that I find the pride in after all these, I guess, 20 years, because again, I did sign up in 2001, so it's been 20 years since I took that oath. But I think once I was able to get out and retire from the military, I was able to, be able to give back in so many other ways and still serve my country. And for me, I I think I do it with pride, and I hope that I'm making everybody else also proud of being able to serve in so many ways. Because again, serving doesn't just mean that you are serving in the military; it has so many other meanings to it. I mean, look what you are doing by telling all of these stories with not only so many great veterans, but you did it with your dad by, with the book. I mean, there's just so many things that other people who did not have that opportunity to serve to still be able to take a stand and say that, they're serving their country as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, and for us to hear your story is so unbelievably moving. And it's a tribute to the military, but also to the families who support military. And you had extended family literally around the world praying for you during all that time. We have so many questions from people literally around the globe, Jessica, who sent in questions. They were so excited that you were joining us for this very, very special event. And I want to get to a few of them.
Yeah.
One is from Almira, who's in Augusta, Georgia. And Almira asks, were you ever evaluated for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder? What are your symptoms? What treatments have you tried? And have they worked for you?
Yeah, actually, I had I had been. Yeah, I that's just kind of a customary thing, especially when you are taken prisoner of war. You come back, they do evaluate you for that. I was diagnosed with it just because I was having such a hard time with my survivor's guilt. I didn't understand why I survived And, some of my comrades like Lori, for instance, who had two children, who had, she was 23, she kind of had her life together already. So I guess for me, just looking back, and I was like, I'm 19. I'm just kind of getting started on life. And I don't know. I think when you're in that kind of position, you don't understand anything, and I still don't understand it. So when it does get to me, but nothing that they did for me helped. It actually kind of made things worse, because I didn't want to kind of rehash all of those feelings, all of those actions, because to me, it wasn't allowing me to get over that grieving process. It was literally keeping me in that same little bubble, and I wasn't able to grow. And yeah, I mean, so their medication was just kind of keeping me, I don't want to say sedated, because that's definitely not what they were doing by any means. They were definitely trying to help me cope better. But for me, I guess the side effects, it just, therapy just, and the medication did not work for me. What worked for me was surrounding myself with so many supportive friends and family. And I guess thankfully I have that worldwide. No matter where I go, I'm able to be able to lean on someone, or be able to talk about what their veteran loved one had done. So I think stories and just surrounding myself with that support is what honestly worked best for me. And again, it's different for every single person, but for me, that is how I have been able to cope. And still today, I mean, it's hard, especially around the holidays, around the anniversary of the ambush. um it's difficult, and I understand it, for everyone, because I'm not the only one that has went through something traumatic. Everybody has experienced something like that. So I think, again, it that didn't work for me. It was just kind of finding my own method, and surrounding myself with loved ones.
And you have many people who love you, believe me. Sherry from Mexico City mentioned that you were a Glamour Woman of the Year, and you've been honored in so many beautiful ways. What is your message for young women?
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, back in 2003, I was one of Glamour Magazine's Women of the Year. And
Carnegie Hall and the whole to do, right?
So, yeah, I think for me, the message for young women would be just, be yourself, first of all. I know that everyone says that, but again, you have to be able to be confident in your own skin. You have to be able to know exactly kind of what you want to do with your life and your goals. And that was something that I set for myself immediately coming out of, after rehabilitation, was, now what do I do with my life? Where do I want to go? So yeah, I mean, for me, it was setting goals, reaching those goals, because not just setting them, you actually have to go after them, and reach them. And so yeah, I say to young women, find what you are passionate about, be confident in yourself, and yeah, set those goals. And they don't have to be all reached overnight. Work on them a little bit at a time, but definitely be who you are and what makes you comfortable and what you want to do as a young woman.
Great advice. From Sue in Fairbanks, Alaska, ask, who was your greatest role model and why? Where did you get your strength from? Was it your parents, or where was it?
Actually, I mean, yeah, obviously my parents are huge in my life, but um, no, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think for me, just finding that strength then was, just growing up here in West Virginia. I was always kind of competitive. I loved being in sports. So I had a lot of great role models, everyone from your school teachers to your sports coaches. Again, yeah, I think that kind of growing up in a small town, you're able to look around you and see so many great women that you admire, and that was definitely the case for me. So, but yeah, finding the strength in Iraq, it was just kind of pulling it within every bit that I could, and holding on to any kind of hope, and again praying.
This is from Sima in Jakarta, Indonesia, who knows your story very well. First says that they are so unbelievably inspired by you, as are all of us tuning in here now, Jessica. Um, I know hearing your story, I can overcome anything. What do you hope other people learn from you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, like when I go and do these motivational speeches, I talk about that perseverance and being able to overcome any kind of obstacle that you are facing. Again, I'm not the only one that has been through these obstacles or struggles, or, you know, roadblocks, as I can, call them. But we all face, these trials and tribulations, and it's just being able to find that strength within you. For me, it was that perseverance, that never give up attitude, that I wanted to be able to hold on for one more day, that I wanted to be able to keep going. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of my message, is just talking about, no matter what you are facing in life, you are able to kind of overcome it. So yeah, again, you gotta have it within your heart first, within your soul, to be able to want to do these kind of things.
Well, boy, have you inspired us for this incredible, incredible event here, Jessica Lynch. And it's really just a privilege and an incredible honor to have you with us. And we are so thankful that you are here to share your story. And I think your message right there, that was such a perfect one to end on, because so many people go through difficult moments. Nothing compared, I think, to what you went through, but we can all take the incredible strength from your story, especially as people have gone through the pandemic and a difficult period in their lives right now. I think your story is even more important than ever before. And we can all learn some really powerful lessons from this. I know that I have, and I'm sure everybody watching right now too as well. Jessica, thank you for being with us. Just thank you for making the time, and thank you for your incredible life and your incredible story of survival and heroism. And what a beautiful tribute you are, not just to your life, but all the military and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It was wonderful to have you here. And everybody also, to find out about more events, make sure, because we have so many great speakers. And I'm sure that many of you were moved to tears today, as I was, listening to Jessica's powerful life story. And to find out more about future events, go to globalserviceinstitute.org, globalserviceinstitute.org. Find out how you can get engaged, how you can help out, and also about our future events. We have so many incredible ones, but boy, was this very, very special. And I will see you all very soon.